Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Mark's Inspiration. Glad you could join me here today. As always, smash that like button now and subscribe if you haven't already. And today's topic is going to be the power of femininity. Ah, yes. Seems we've lost that here in the United States. Women are somewhat, or seem to be trained to be like men. When women shake my hands nowadays, they grab my hand like a man. I don't particularly like that, but I understand they've been trained and programmed that if they do that, that men will take them as their equals. What, as equal strength, emotionally and physically? I don't think so. As equals in the eyes of God, or however you choose to view your higher power, if you have one, sure, I agree with that 100%. But women in general are not going to be as equally strong emotionally and physically as a man. So I prefer, it's just me, but I come from the old school, a woman give me her hand, because she's not a man. I'm not going to act like a woman because I'm not a woman. I mean, unless I'm one of these transgenders, which I don't understand that, but I believe everyone is free to do whatever they want to, and if that's the way you need to express yourself, then you go right ahead. Just don't ask me to change my vocabulary and my life for you to keep you from being offended. I have friends that are gay. Some of them are more masculine than some of the men I know. So we're talking about femininity today. So if you're a man, you choose to be feminine, hey, go right ahead. It's a free world. You can live your life the way you want to. I have no qualms against that. But I'm talking here about femininity with women. And it seems to be a lost power, or at least the idea that it has no power whatsoever. And it is not to be honored. But I believe that femininity is to be honored. There's a strength and a power in femininity that people have actually negated or dropped by the wayside. They forget to look back in history at how many women have seduced and manipulated their way into power and actually were the ones running the great countries, nations, kingdoms. It wasn't the man. In a way, he was more or less a puppet. So tell me there, the man had the brute strength, the force of the armies, his knights, tanks, guns, whatever it happened to be in whatever period of history, but yet the operant power behind him was the woman. How is that? So why is femininity looked on as weak? Well, because we have a lot of women that think men have continued to run the world, and actually they have. But they don't think about the women who have been behind these men. Now, we'll give a few examples in history I looked up today. 5 bold women in history who seduced their way in power. And that word seduce sometimes gets a bad rap, like that's some kind of evil, destructive force. But seduction is done in sales. It's just a word used to, even the word manipulation. We manipulate things all the time. We manipulate materials, we manipulate people, we manipulate bread dough. I'm not sure if anybody knows, we made the dough with our hands and we kneaded, they called kneading the bread dough. We manipulated that, okay? And this is just a form of manipulating people to do things that we want them to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting them to do something evil or something that's going to be harmful to them or others. We manipulate them in a way, and that can be as simple as something, telling someone that, hey, if you do this, this is what the outcome will be. It will be in your favor. You could consider that manipulation, but it's manipulation to help someone achieve maybe the goal they want to achieve or to achieve the greater good. It doesn't do harm to someone, although it can be used, like all things, it can be used for, we'll say evil if you want to use that word. Let's say bad or good. Evil to me connotates some type of religious function, like the devil or something. If there's a devil, it's doubt and fear, and that's what keeps you from achieving your dreams and goals. Doubt and fear. Procrastination is just doubt and fear dressed up in another word. Okay, so we got 5 bold women. Let's go through some of these that seduced their way to power. They didn't have to use their brute force. Contrary to what a lot of, at least in the West, that women are strong and empowered. And I'm not saying they're not empowered, but they're not going to have the strength. In general, there's always those outliers, a few percent that, yeah, there's some strong women out there. I've seen them. I would fight them like a man if I got into it with them. I mean, there's MMA fighters out there, okay, and weightlifters, and okay. I mean, they got a body like a man. So I'm not saying there's not physically strong women, but we're talking in generalizations here because that's kind of how we do. We have to group things in generalizations. So the majority of men are physically and emotionally stronger than women. It's just a fact. Does that make women less than men? No, it doesn't. It's not belittling them. But we have women now who are acting like men. They show them on the programs and TV. They got the women slapping the men down, kicking them in the balls, etc., etc. And these men just fold up like little rag dolls, I'll say it that way. And this causes a belief in people that women can stand up to men in a physical brute force way and confront them, and that's just not true. What happens? I'm sure a lot of you have seen these social media clips where a woman's hitting on this guy and hitting on this guy, and finally he gets tired of it and he just decks her. And then the man gets in trouble, sometimes by the law, but yet he has every right to defend himself as anyone does. But the deal is everyone knows, even though they try to make it like women are as strong as men, everyone knows that men are stronger. So when he does hit her and deck her and hurt her, he gets in trouble, even though she was assaulting him first, because everyone knows that the man has enough physical strength that he can destroy that woman with little effort. I think of one that they were in this elevator. You probably know, I don't know who the name, some famous football, basketball player. And this woman just kept hitting on him and pushing him and yelling at him and screaming. He finally got tired of it and decked her. And I think he might have lost, he got fined maybe by the team, and he got in trouble for that. But where do you draw the line? Do you have to wait until she picks up a knife and stabs you with it? Okay, well, the first thing is, if you're in a relationship with someone like that, and I've been in those before, you need to get out of it. And you need to ask yourself why you're involved with a person like that. So you don't want it to get to that point. I haven't been with anybody like that for many, many years. But in my youth, I was with girls like that. They seem to be the best in bed, the crazy ones. But hey, I had to be crazy too, or I wouldn't have been with him. I remember one time sitting out on my motorcycle. I hadn't been by to see this girl I was going out with for several days, and she was pissed. So I parked my bike in front of her house, and she came out to talk to me. And I was just sitting on my motorcycle, and she just started punching me. And this girl was quite of a tomboy. And she hit me about 10 or 15 times, and I was boxing at that time. And busted my glasses, bloodied my lip, and I just laughed at her. And of course, that made her that much more pissed off. Now you think, why wouldn't you leave, Mark? Well, I knew that if I tried to drive off, she would have tackled me, literally tackled me on the motorcycle. So I was kind of trapped there. So she wanted me to come in the house, and I got in the house, and she continued to go on. I don't think she was hitting me. She started yelling at me, and she might have started hitting me. And one of the only times in my life I wanted to just deck her like a man. I wanted to shoot a straight, hard jab right in her face. But I didn't do it. I've never done that to a woman. I've never punched a woman like I would a man. Wouldn't do that. I mean, unless my life was in danger, or I was into it with an MMA fighter or someone like that. There's some dangerous women out there. Those are some tough women. Okay, so I didn't do that, but I think she jumped on me again. So I wrestled her down to the ground and held her until she finally calmed down. But like I said, I don't get in those crazy relationships anymore. You got to stay out of stuff like that. But that time of my life, I was still drinking and partying and living quite a different life than I am today. But the point of all that is nowadays I see that a lot where a woman thinks she is just as strong as a man and she can just knock them out. Maybe because they're programmed by that. They see these things on TV. But in general, this is not the rule. And then the woman is surprised when the man finally decks her and knocks her down. I don't believe in abusing women. I don't believe in abusing anyone, children, men, anyone. It's for anybody weaker. I don't like bullies. I've never liked bullies. I've always taken up for people that were bullied, and sometimes that's been a woman. I've protected my woman when attempted assaulters have come up, tried to rob us, and I could tell you stories about that too. And that's what a man should do. And that is a man's place, and that has been a man's place for centuries, because they're physically stronger, they're emotionally stronger, and they have what people call toxic masculinity. And if they have to, they can kill someone to protect their wife and their family. And you should be able to do that. Hopefully you never have to, and hopefully I never have to do it either, but I have had to physically protect my family before. I've lived in third world countries, and it's very dangerous in some places, especially when you're a gringo, because to them, all gringos are rich and they always have money. And in comparison to them, most of us are. You could be a poor man up here, but in a third world country where some people are only making $1 a day and they have a family of 6 and they live in a shack, you're a rich man, so you're a target. Okay, but I got to get back to femininity about women. I'm off on a rabbit trail there. Okay, here we go. We got some women here that have seduced their way to power. And the first is someone I do not know. I'm not going to read this whole thing because I don't want to get in trouble for copyrights. They were called scarlet women, evil women, because they seduce. But that's their power of seduction. It can be used to build a man up. There are many men who were successful and famous that had the strength of a woman behind them. What's the old saying? Behind every great man, there's a great woman. Okay, behind every fallen man, a lot of times there's a woman who drug him down. But it's not the woman's fault. He allowed that to happen. The seduction begins, maybe it begins with the woman in her mind, but she transfers that to the mind of a man, and she can actually control that man. But he still allows it to happen. But that is a woman's power. And she can make you or break you. What do they call women? Or dream killers? No. They could be dream killers, but you allow them to kill your dream because your perception, your perspective of the relationship, you become so involved in the relationship and the emotion and the feelings that you get drawn off your course. Or on the reverse side of that, she can actually empower you to be more focused on your goals and your vision, as women have done throughout centuries. Okay, let me see. Who is the first one? Famous by her, this must be a French word, sobriquet, Lady of Beauty, Agnes Sorel, used to dress with one breast exposed. And this was back in the Middle Ages, so you can imagine what a deal that was. Not like now. It's like girls are showing their ass on social media, and it's okay, like it's almost promoted. Don't get me wrong, I like beautiful women. I just don't like some of that stuff. I think it degrades them. I really think it degrades women to do that. There's a time and a place for that. I mean, if you're what do they call them now? A sex worker, then that's your deal. Hey, go for it. So it shows her a picture of her breast. Agnes Sorel, as her sobriquet suggests, was a young and beautiful woman who was a favorite mistress of King Charles VII. Okay, so a mistress. Wasn't her wife, it was a mistress. This influence led the king to boldly declare his fondness for his mistress. Yeah, so he's making this public. Usually mistresses are kept quiet. She earned his affection. Okay. She had a great influence on the king. So there you go. And she didn't do it because she shook his hand like a man, or she thought she could knock him out, or she thought she was equally as strong emotionally and physically as him. She did it with her feminine power. She was in a place of power because of her femininity. Feminine power is it's a tangible power. You could say it's, objective? Or subjective, yeah. You could say it's subjective, but it turns into objective because of the force of when you say manipulation, it sounds, okay, of her influence, or the force of her influence on the king. She probably could have just said, hey, I want this guy dead. He would have been dead, were it not one of the king's best buddies. But can you imagine? Now, she got that by using her femininity. Very smart, wise. Harriet Wilson, the clever courtesan, used her wit to earn huge sums of money from her ex-lovers. All right, there's another one. Born in 1786 in London, Harriet Wilson is renowned for her work, Memoirs of Harriet Wilson. Harriet Wilson was one of the most highly valued, famous British Regency courtesans. At an early age of 15, oh my God, she was going out with men. Would they call her a pedophile now? Or they would call him a pedophile nowadays, the guys that were going out with her. But back then they knew that the ages of the best fertility was the age of 15 to 25. This is the time when women are the most desirable. Of course, we need to follow the laws in our country. Now, here it's 17. But I don't believe I would go out with a 17-year-old. Okay. Wilson was high-spirited, quick-witted, and so she charmed her way to London's high society. So she was intermingled with the power at the time, and she did it with her feminine prowess, her feminine selectivity, her feminine influence. She didn't do it by shaking hands with the men like she's their equal, okay? She was actually more than their equal when it comes to influence and ability to get what she wanted. She had a great power, but it lied in her femininity, her ability to coerce men or to convince or to influence men. This ability of hers, coupled with her particularness in choice, led her to become the mistress of some very notable people of the time, including renowned prime ministers, war heroes, and royals. So she was connected with power. And your connections are some of the most important things you have in life, as you men well know, as successful men know. Connections, the people you know. And every person you know knows, I don't know how many other people and they know. So you can always succeed through your connections if people favor you. Wilson was at the door of poverty. She was poor. When she came up with a brilliant solution to her problems, she authored her famous memoirs in which she exposed the minutest details of her relationship with the men she was with. Hence, she used blackmail as a way to steer her way through difficult times. She would notify the men before publishing her texts and would demand a price to maintain their anonymity. Hence, this way, she not only charged for her attractiveness, but now for her discretion, too. Well, that sounds a little evil, but hey, I guess a woman has to survive, huh? You should never trust a woman that is that manipulative. That's how they bring down kingdoms. Theodora became an empress. Theodora, now this was back in daughter of Acacius, who was a bear trainer in Constantinople. So we know that was thousands of years ago. Theodora's early life is one that was grounded in humble origins and far from any sort of power in politics. Even though details of her early life are vague, Theodora is said to have been an actress and a courtesan in her early years. She served as a mistress to numerous powerful people and is reported to have converted to, I'll give it a try, Miaphysite Christianity. At around the age of 22, she became affiliated with Justinian, who was the heir to the Byzantine Empire. Okay, I'm not going to read it all, but here's another one. Theodora rose to power alongside her husband Justinian, who became the emperor in 527 AD, so 500 years after Christ. Not only did Theodora support her husband, there you go, right there. She supported her husband. So in this case, she was the power behind her husband. Once again, women have the power to make or break a great leader or a man or a poor man as far as that goes. I've experienced some of that myself. If a woman is not an asset, she's a liability. If she's not empowering you, if you have to wonder what she's doing, if you're worried about her because she's out partying all night or she's out with her friends or she's not coming home if she has a job, I prefer a woman to stay home and take care of the home. Of course, I may be called a misogynist for that, but right here I'm telling you that women have power, just not the type of power they're reaching for in these days. Women are able in the U.S. and Western countries to make it on their own because of the systems men have put into place and the systems that are maintained by men. So without that, the women would not have the power that they have today. The ability to not have a man to help them support themselves and their children. All these are put into place by men, these systems. So that's something to think about. Now, that doesn't mean women are less than. It just means that that's the way it is and that's the way it's been. And men need women. Without women, we would what? We would die out as the human race. So there you go. Women are much better. Actually, they're the only ones who can bear children. And they're much better at nurturing and raising children than men are. So there you go. Does that mean that men are less than women? No, it doesn't. We're different. We're not the same. There's no sameness. No matter how hard women try, it's not going to be that way. Never. We're not the same. And isn't that great? I don't want women to be the same as me. I don't want them to think the same as me. Wouldn't that be boring? And women, wouldn't that be boring for you if men thought the same things that you thought and they acted the way you wanted them to? There's got to be some contrast. We have to have some polarity. That's what makes life exciting. It's like the heart monitor in the hospital. When that sucker's going up and down, you're alive and you're feeling that life. And when it goes like this, you're a dead man. So if we were all the same, wouldn't that be boring? What if there were no controversy, no trouble? What if women didn't try to exert themselves? That would be boring too. So that makes for life. It makes life exciting. So I'm not saying it's wrong that women are shaking hands like men and trying to be like men. It's amazing, though, how many women badmouth men, but yet they try to be like men. But I understand that. Were I a woman, I would probably be doing the same thing. Raised up in the society that we're raised up in today that tells women they need to go out and have a career and have it all. Well, you can't have it all. I can't have it all. I can't have my boys, raise my boys, and still expect to be out traveling all the time. I mean, I can't travel around the world and be here to be a good influence. I can't be an example for my boys, can I? I have to have some kind of communication. I have to spend time with them. I can't have my wife and a half a dozen other women too. I tried that once, didn't work out too well. In some countries, maybe you can do that. What I'm saying is you can have everything you want, but you can't have everything you think you want. Many people think they want this, they think they want that, and then even if they get it, they find out they're disappointed. You're always going to want one more thing. On your deathbed, you're going to want one more breath. And guess what? The time will come when you won't get it. So you need to be content with what you have, but yet desire for more, but not so much that it makes you discontent. We all want to desire. We all have desires. I think Buddha said that we have to get rid of our desires. But what is life without desire? To desire to have no desires is a desire in itself. At least that's the way I view it. Okay, we will continue. Number 4, and you all know this one, and this is the one I think about. Cleopatra. The lady who ruled Egypt used her influence as a woman to protect her empire. And who was she hanging out with? It was Mark Antony. Yeah, she ruled as co-regent at first with her father, then with her brothers. Okay. Her first affair is reported to have been with the famous Julius Caesar. I didn't know that. She charmed him with her wit and even had a child with him. However, Caesar was brutally murdered, we all know that, by the Senate in 44 BC, and Cleopatra turned to one of Caesar's allied, Mark Antony. The two became lovers and eventually got married. She had a great influence. Egypt did grow prosperous under Cleopatra's rule. However, that was short-lived. Egypt soon fell into turmoil despite this alliance and ceded power to Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir. The demise of Cleopatra and Antony is well renowned as during the war with Octavian. Antony heard the news of Cleopatra committing suicide and he fell on his sword. So there you go. He was so wrapped up in this woman. She had her hold on him so much, and she didn't do it by overpowering him physically or acting like she was a man. She did it with her femininity. that when she died, he killed himself. Huh. Anthony heard the news of Cleopatra committing suicide and fell on his sword. Cleopatra, who had not died yet. I don't quite understand that. Buried her husband and committed suicide by using a poisonous snake known as asp. But anyway, so there you go. These two were so wrapped up in each other. All right, and Cleopatra used her femininity to gain power through Mark Antony, Julius Caesar. Once again, feminine power. And who is the future of our nation, of any nation? It's the children. Who's raising the children? Well, if you're in the U.S., daycare is raising them, mostly. They're in daycare, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, some kids? The mothers, the women, have a great influence on the future of the nation. They should be taking, in my opinion, they should be taking care of their kids, at least till they go to school. Those kids need their mothers. I haven't met too many mothers that said, I wish I could work more so I wouldn't be home. They say, I wish I could stay home with my kids. And many of these mothers could stay home if they didn't have the 2 Escalades in the driveway. And this is probably going to piss some women off. And the $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million house, whatever it is, that they got to pay for. They're strapped down. They're a slave to the lender. And thus they sacrifice their kids and the future of the country so they can have a few material things and keep up with the Joneses. That's just my belief. When I was a kid, most of the mothers were home, at least until the kids were in school. And then they went to work. Isn't staying home with kids and raising them one of the most important careers and jobs a woman could have? And you as a man have a responsibility to be a provider enough, to earn enough, that she can stay home and raise your progeny, to raise your kids. That's your responsibility as a man, to provide a safe, stable home for her to stay home and raise your kids. Do you want a daycare worker raising your kids? Someone who hasn't graduated from high school? Although I didn't graduate either, so that's not necessarily a line that has to be drawn. They could be a loving person, that's for sure. I'm not saying all daycare workers are bad. I couldn't do what they do. It's like a bus driver. I wouldn't want to drive a bus. But the point I'm making here is, if you vet your woman properly, don't you want her attitudes, outlooks on life being imprinted upon your children? As you know, between the ages of, I think it's 0 and 7, it's called the impression period. Your kids' minds are like a sponge. Whatever people tell them, they soak that up as the truth, especially the authority figures. So in this case, in daycare, whatever they're hearing from the authority figures, which generally you don't know what background these people come from, your children are taking that in as the truth because they don't have a conscious mind to differentiate between what is good for them and what is bad for them, what is true, what is false. Do they have the TV going in the daycare? Are they being influenced with everything you want them influenced with? I'm 61 years old. I have 8 kids. I may have a couple more kids. And I'm a hell of a lot better father now than I would have been in my younger years, especially my 20s. The point I'm making is this. I would do a lot of things different. I would not hold my kids back as much from trying things out, even though they'll get hurt. Because when kids are born, they're unlimited. They're born only with 2 fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. We teach them all those other fears, obviously to keep them from killing themselves, because kids are just daring as hell. But yet sometimes we limit them too much, all for their own good. Just like our government tries to limit us. It's all for our own good. And don't we get rebellious and angry because we think we should be able to decide what is for our own good? I think we do. Well, children are the same way. We need to give children a little more freedom to try things when they're learning, when they're stepping out, when they're experimenting. They're just curious. Of course, we do have to keep them from killing themselves. But anyway, the point here is we need the mothers to raise the kids. Every kid wants to be raised by his mom and dad. He doesn't want to spend 8 or 10, 12 hours in daycare, nor should he have to. Now, I know there's some women out there that don't have a husband, maybe the husband died or left, and you have to work and you have to put your kid in daycare. And that sucks, all right? Back when I was younger, most of the time, there was a grandparent that could take care of the kids, or a friend or a neighbor. I was at the babysitters, at the neighbors many times, but now things are quite different. There's so many liabilities that they can't do that. But the woman's job is so important. And if you know a woman that is staying home with her children, praise her. Give her some praise. Tell her to be proud of herself. I've seen many times where women are almost belittled. Well, don't you work? Well, yeah, I have 3 kids, the woman says. I'm staying home with them. But you don't work? 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's no sick days or no days off, no vacations. I've done it myself. I've had my kids for the last 10 years by myself. I know what it's like. It's a tough job. It's a career. And it's a career that a woman can and should be proud of, and people should praise her for, not belittle her for because she doesn't have a job at McDonald's or some secretary job making $10, $20 an hour or $30 an hour. By the time they go out and work, it's not hardly worth it because they have to pay the daycare and thinking about what the child misses from being at home with the parent, the real parent. That in itself, what value can you put on that? All right, so I'm off femininity. I better stop. But anyway, I hope this has been of value to you today. If you'd like to get my help personally, my website is marksinspiration.com. And remember, for you women, femininity is a power. It's not a weakness. And for men, remember, feminine women are powerful women. And I like feminine women. That's all I got for today. Have a great day.